You're listening to A Slice of Therapy with me, Alan Parry. When Arnold Schwarzenegger started getting interested in being in the movie business, he would get the same advice from agent after agent. And you can probably guess what the advice was. They said, "You, Arnold, you need to change your accent." And he'd hear this all the time. You need to change your accent. And Arnold Schwarzenegger thought, I don't need to change my accent. My accent is a big part of who I am. And so he kept his accent. And I wonder what the Terminator films would be like if Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't actually have Arnold Schwarzenegger's real accent. I wonder what that would have been like with just a standard, ordinary, typical accent rather than his. You see, Arnold Schwarzenegger took the opinion that this wasn't something that he needed to change. It was something that he needed to embrace, to accept. That it was actually an aspect of who he was. And it's an interesting point because the issue of change comes up quite a lot in my work in terms of therapy. But then so too does the concept of acceptance. And it's interesting to kind of come up with whether change or acceptance is the most appropriate for you in any moment. You know, sometimes like Arnold Schwarzenegger, the thing that everyone was telling him to change was actually a key part of his uniqueness. Something that made Schwarzenegger Schwarzenegger. And it reminds me, of those awful gay conversion therapies that went on and still go on in some places. So when do we need to change and when do we need to find acceptance is what I want to talk about on this particular podcast today. Because it's actually quite a difficult question to figure out. Sometimes change is beneficial, but then sometimes acceptance is a better course of action. And so what I'll look at today is a couple of frames of reference where you can use in order to ask this question of yourself. For instance, if the world was totally accepting of you, would you still want to change? Are you changing for you? Or are you changing in an attempt to win the approval of others? Now that's an important question to ask yourselves and to see what that throws up. In the area of life that you're wanting to change, in the area of you that you're wanting to improve on, is that because you want to change or because you believe that it might win the approval of other people? You see, change can be important. And of course, a lot of my work is helping people to create change and successfully create change so that life can change and life can improve. And yet, like most things, change is not an inherent good. And change itself, the actual process of change, it can have a real striving quality. It can make life better, but it can also make life worse. It can feel like this burden to carry. And I suppose it's like a knife, isn't it? That a knife can cause great harm, and yet in the hands of a skilled surgeon can also bring great healing. Like fire can restore warmth to a very cold person, or it can destroy. And I think change has that similar dual quality. So when you reach out for change, maybe change is the thing that needs to happen for you. But it's worth asking, isn't it? What would happen if you accepted yourself instead? What if you asked the question, do I really need to change? What if I just accepted myself as I am? And of course, there's no right answer to this, because change and acceptance, neither of them are an inherent good. It will depend upon where you are and what your situation is and what the thing is that you're thinking of changing. But it is an important question to ponder and to put that to yourself. What if I just accepted myself as I am? Do I really need to change this thing about myself? So how can we get a sense of that? How can we get a sense of whether to go with change or acceptance? Well, here's a little kind of thought experiment. Imagine a genie suddenly appeared and cast a spell on you that says that you're fixed as you are, that change was simply not possible, that this is you now, this is your life circumstances, this is how you think, this is how you act, this is how you interact. The genie has cast a spell that says that change is not possible. And as you look at each aspect of you and each aspect of your life, to what extent does that idea actually relax you? To what extent do you think, oh, thank goodness, and you actually feel some ease around the fact that change is no longer possible? To what extent do you breathe a sigh of relief that this is not something you have to strive around anymore because it's locked in place? And to what extent do you feel alarmed by the genie's spell because you're really eager for change in that area and you think, I don't want to be locked in place like this? So that thought experiment is an interesting one, because where you find yourself saying, oh, thank goodness, I don't have to do that change anymore, I can just relax, and it gives you a sense of ease. Maybe in those places is where acceptance might be needed. And where you feel alarmed and you think, no, this definitely has to change, this is not good news at all, maybe those are the areas where change is the most beneficial. But of course, sometimes it's not you that needs to change. Until I was 35 years of age, I didn't last in any job beyond 2 years. I would quit my jobs within 2 years, without exception. And so maybe I needed to change. Maybe I needed to increase my level of tolerance for things that I didn't like. But maybe not. Maybe I needed to accept the fact that I simply hadn't found the work that suited me. And of course, from my vantage point now, where I have found the work that suits me and that I love, then I can see that accepting myself was clearly a much better course of action, not just for me, but for the people I work with as well, than just changing my level of tolerance for the things that didn't really fit. So sometimes it's not you that needs to change. It's your environment. It's the kind of people that you hang out with. And changing those sort of things is the change that's needed rather than the change in you to try and fit into where you are. It reminds me of gardening, really. If you have a plant and that plant isn't thriving, we don't try and get the plant to change, do we? We accept the plant and we seek to give the plant what it needs. We change the soil, we move its location so it's getting more sun, we water it more, we give it what it needs while accepting it how it is. And so what would that look like for you? What are the external things that you might change for you? Where you can accept who you are and how you are, but it might be, for instance, the kind of people you hang out with aren't really your people and you need to find your own tribe. Or maybe the work you're doing isn't really the work that's suited to you, so you need to find something that is. Or whatever it happens to be. But again, it's an interesting one to look at, because maybe there is change needed, but still it might not be change that is to do with you, but more change to ensure that you're in an environment that helps you thrive. One other way to think about change is, what if you got into a change machine? What if you got into a machine that changed things about you? And it would change everything about you apart from the things that you asked it not to change. Now, this is quite a radical idea, isn't it? You would walk in and anything that you'd not specifically asked the machine to keep as it is, it would change. What would you keep about you? What are the things where you would say to the machine, listen, don't touch that. I like that about me. I don't want to risk changing that about me. What are the qualities about you that you'd want to maintain? Because you like them. Because you like you. And again, that can be another route. If you actually take some time, get a pen out and start scribbling on a pad. If you stepped into this change machine and it would change everything other than the things you told it not to, what would those things be that you told it not to? And what is it you like about them that you want to keep them? And again, that gives you another little clue as to where acceptance might play a greater role than change. And finally, of course, is the question that even if you do go down the route of change, how much change is enough? That you have to keep changing forever? Because when we're striving for change, that has such an energy, doesn't it? It's so effortful. It's hard work sometimes when we're striving for change. So when does that striving for change start to get in the way of life more than the thing that you're trying to change itself? Because that can be a good clue as well as to when there's been enough change and it's actually going to be the striving for change that's going to be more problematic than the thing you're trying to change itself. And so change can be really valuable, but then so too can acceptance. And the purpose of this episode is just to ask you the question, which is it that you actually need right now? And so let's have a quick recap. We looked at Arnold Schwarzenegger's accent, that everyone said that he should change, but he accepted it, he embraced it, he regarded it as his uniqueness. And those Terminator films would be nowhere near as good, would they, without that accent that he has. And we looked at a number of things about change, like if the world was accepting of you, would you still change? Are you changing for you or to get approval from others? And we saw how change can be important, but just like a knife or fire is not an inherent good. It can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. And we had that thought experiment about the genie. What if it fixed you in place and change was not possible? What are the things where you feel ease and thank goodness that change isn't possible, and where is there alarm? Because that gives you a clue as to where acceptance and change best fit. And of course, we looked at me quitting all my jobs until I found the kind of work that was right for me, and how with a plant, we try and give it what it needs to thrive. And so sometimes the change isn't us, but the environment we put ourselves in. We looked at the change machine, about what are the things you would keep about you, and finally asked, how much change is enough? When does the change itself get in the way of life a lot more than the thing that we're trying to change does. So thanks for listening. I hope this has been useful. If it has, then please share the episode so somebody else can benefit too. And you could work with me directly one-to-one. I'm Alan Parry, and you can find out more at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. And of course, I work online, so you don't have to be local. You could be listening in from anywhere and still be able to work with me. And please do subscribe to the podcast because it's completely free and it means you'll never miss another episode again. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one.